Welcome back to Hollywood Buzzing. And today's update might just be the most outrageous thing we've seen all season. The referees have finally dropped their official report on the recent WNBA clash involving CaitlinClark, Sophie Cunningham, and multiple controversial calls. And believe it or not, the situation is somehow worse than we even imagined. The WNBA officiating crew just released their findings from the now infamous Connecticut Sun versus Indiana Fever matchup. And let's just say it's not doing the league any favors. What was already seen as a disaster on the court is now being confirmed in writing by the officials themselves, and fans are losing it. Their explanations for why they ejected certain players while ignoring blatant fouls and borderline assaults are so laughably bad that it almost seems like a parody. The way this report describes the incidents targeting CaitlinClark confirms what many fans have long suspected. The biased officiating is very real, and that Clark has been held to an unfair and dangerous standard. Let's start with J.C. Sheldon. According to the official report, Sheldon's contact with Clark was unnecessary and involved a wind-up that led to facial contact. That alone should be textbook flagrant 2, and by their own definition, it meets every criterion: unnecessary contact, wind-up, and potential for injury. And yet, they only called it a flagrant 1. The logic here is absolutely mind-bending. How do you describe the very elements that define a flagrant 2 and still downgrade the call? It's like explaining how someone ran a red light, hit a pedestrian, and then saying it was only a parking violation. If anything, this exposes how predetermined their decision was. They had already decided not to eject Sheldon and simply twisted the language to support that choice. The ball wasn't even near Clark's right side when Sheldon clawed at her face. There was no basketball play in motion that could justify this contact. This wasn't incidental, it was a targeted act. But the real insult came when Marina Mabrey sprinted across the court and body-checked Clark during a dead ball moment. The official's response? That the contact did not rise to the level of an ejection. Are we serious right now? Mabrey's act had no competitive justification. It was pure retaliation and intimidation, yet the officials shrugged it off. Even more shocking is that CaitlinClark, after taking both the eye gouge and the body check, was the one given a technical foul for reacting in what was called an unsportsmanlike manner. So now, holding your face in pain is unsportsmanlike? What was she supposed to do? Applaud her attackers. The hypocrisy is outrageous. It's not just bad officiating anymore. It's a systemic issue where the victim gets penalized for not staying silent. Let's not forget the technical foul on Tina Charles. Her offense? Walking toward Clark and pointing. No physical contact, no altercation. Yet, that was enough for a technical. Meanwhile, 2 players had physically assaulted Clark, and they stayed in the game. The double standards here are not subtle, they're staggering. The one time the officials got it right was with Sophie Cunningham's retaliation. She received a flagrant 2 for wrapping up Sheldon, and yeah, that call actually made sense. Her actions were excessive and unnecessary. But what makes that even more frustrating is that Cunningham only acted because the refs refused to handle the initial assault. Sophie stepped up because the officials wouldn't. That's the real issue. Players are starting to take matters into their own hands because they've lost faith in officiating. Sophie essentially did the ref's job for them by sending a message. CaitlinClark isn't going to be a punching bag. Unfortunately, she paid the price because she dared to stand up where the officials failed. And that's not just unfair, it's dangerous. The officiating in Clark's games this season has followed a consistent and troubling pattern. Contact that would be flagged as flagrant against other players gets ignored when it's against Clark. Meanwhile, if she so much as reacts, she's whistled for technicals. The imbalance has become so obvious that fans can predict it before it happens. But it's not just American fans watching. International basketball communities are paying attention too, and what they're seeing isn't pretty. The WNBA's most marketable star, the face of the league's future, is being targeted and left unprotected. And the league's officials are enabling it. Globally, that's a terrible look. Social media has erupted. Fans, analysts, and even former players are roasting this referee report for how out of touch and biased it sounds. The explanations are being mocked across platforms, and the WNBA's credibility is suffering. When your referees become the punchline to a joke about professionalism, your league has a problem. What's even more troubling is how this impacts Clark's actual game. She now plays with the knowledge that she won't be protected like other players. That's not just bad for her, it's bad for basketball. She has to alter how aggressively she plays to avoid injury or retaliation, and that weakens the game overall. This isn't just about one matchup or one player, it's about the precedent being set. If opposing players know they can target Clark and walk away without consequences, the entire league becomes a less safe place to compete. It's a green light for dirty play, and the refs have handed it out freely. And the financial implications? Let's talk about that. Clark is a major revenue driver. She draws record-breaking TV ratings and consistently sells out arenas. But when the refs put her in harm's way or diminish her performance with questionable calls, they're putting the league's biggest investment at risk. It's bad business, plain and simple. Especially with the WNBA looking to close major media deals and expand its presence in the sports world. What do broadcasters see when they tune in to a Fever game? Their star being assaulted while officials do nothing and then penalize her for reacting. That's not a sellable product. The refereeing crew from that game should absolutely be held accountable. Their own report reads like a confession of incompetence. They admitted the situation got out of control. They admitted they failed to manage the game early on. And yet somehow they still tried to shift the blame onto others. Clark, Cunningham, and even Lindsay Allen, who got ejected despite barely being involved. The inconsistencies are glaring. Mabry stayed in the game despite committing one of the most blatant deadball fouls of the year. But Allen? Gone. And why? Because she got caught up in the chaos that the refs themselves failed to control. It's like blaming the bystanders for a fire that you started. And then there's Coach Stephanie White. Her post-game press conference was nothing short of masterful. When reporters tried to bait Clark into commenting on the officiating, White stepped in to shield her player and call out the failures with poise. She didn't scream. She didn't rant. But her message was devastating. She said the officials knew early in the game that it was spiraling but failed to regain control. She called them out for falling behind the evolution of the league, saying players are faster and stronger now, while the referees haven't kept up. That kind of critique stings because it's hard to refute. White's words struck a perfect balance. She defended her player, supported the league's mission, and isolated the referees as the root of the problem. It wasn't an attack on the WNBA, it was an indictment of its officiating standards. And she's not alone. Multiple coaches have been voicing similar concerns this season. That's how we know it's not an isolated incident. It's a pattern, and it's undeniable. If you want to destroy trust in a sport, this is how you do it. You allow biased officiating to become the norm. Let your stars get injured or disrespected, and then you back your officials instead of demanding better. Other pro leagues have their share of ref drama, but few have ever published a report that so blatantly confirms fan suspicions while simultaneously digging the hole deeper. This isn't just a PR nightmare. It's a crisis of credibility. And here's the worst part. CaitlinClark is only in her second season. She should be focused on developing her game, not navigating an invisible war with referees. She should be an ambassador for the league, not a symbol of everything that's wrong with it. The disparity between how her situations are handled versus others is so obvious. It makes people question if the outcomes of games are even legitimate. When that happens, you lose your fan base. The damage from this one referee report is long-lasting. It will be cited for years as the clearest example of institutional bias. It's a blueprint for what not to do when managing stars in a professional league. The WNBA had a chance to course correct, and instead they doubled down. Now they're dealing with the fallout. Fans are furious. Players are frustrated. and the league's reputation has taken a major hit. In a time when women's sports are finally breaking into mainstream headlines, this kind of dysfunction is the last thing we need. If the WNBA wants to build a legacy, it has to start by protecting its stars, enforcing fair play, and holding officials to the same standards as players and coaches. This referee report might be the most damaging document in the WNBA's recent history, and it didn't have to be this way. But now the proof is out there, and the world is watching. Stay tuned right here on Hollywood Buzzing for more updates.